Well, internationalisation of education has got an amazing history. If you actually look back, there was movement of scholars all the way through Europe in the Middle Ages. The idea of knowledge being created in one place and then being transmitted through scholarly institutions across a very, very wide geographical area has an incredible pedigree. We're doing it now in different ways, but the idea of this creation of knowledge and then dissemination it's something which began with human civilization. There are changes in the international character of education, and some of that change is happening quite quickly. Some of it is driven by economic factors. It is clear that the advanced state of capitalism that we're now in is invoking forms of trade, forms of communication, forms of exchange which we've not seen previously. Accompanying that economic development, migration of labour, migration of capital, ideas, markets changing and shifting because of these international pressures. Those are all now features of our economy and of our society, and education is changing to meet the needs coming from that. And also it's changing because we have an acute recognition of inequalities in educational opportunity and in attainment. For everybody to participate in a global economy and for the kind of things that we see as dysfunctional, conflict between people, conflict between nations, we need to ensure that education is equitably distributed. It is about life chances, it's about getting the skills embedded right the way across the world and not just concentrated in a few centres. That issue of the relationship between internationalisation and globalisation is playing out differently in different societies. I was in Japan recently, and the government there is looking at how they can incorporate an understanding of development education in the national curriculum for all, because they see Japanese youth as being somewhat insular. Those youth are entirely adequate in terms of being able to grasp key aspects of language, of foreign languages, in terms of languages other than Japanese, of numeracy, sciences and so on. But what they feel that they lack is an empathy and understanding of other cultures. So that's how it's playing out there. One thing that's absolutely critical to recognise is that in any national curriculum, many subjects, many themes, many issues compete for space. There's just too much to put into the curriculum for schools and for young people. So an international agenda has to compete alongside so many other things, jostling for space in terms of a domestic agenda for space in a national curriculum. We know in England, for example, that modern foreign language is not as widely studied by young people as perhaps it should be to enable their international mobility and their understanding of other cultures. It would be good for them, it would be good for the economy to have both those skills and that understanding. So you do have to produce a rationale for including any aspects of international education into a national curriculum. It has to be legitimated, it has to be evidenced. And that's why we want to run a conference. We want to see what should be included, what kind of space it should actually assume, what the purpose of it actually is. And we just recognise that there are different rationales in different settings around the world. I think it is a key question, is international education, i.e. looking at all the common elements across the globe, sort of leading to an absolutely common curriculum for everybody. I don't see it running that way at all. And we need to actually discuss the differences that are emerging in different national systems and the different pressures that are being exerted on international education. For example, if you ask a Native American what's most important to them in the curriculum, they'll say it's absolutely history. It's the history of their culture which is fundamental to them, both in terms of handing on the accumulated knowledge of previous generations and generating new knowledge. You talk to a European, many Europeans will say, oh, it's absolutely about science, it's about the STEM subjects, and they should form the central part of the curriculum. So different cultures emphasise different elements of curriculum. Now in that, is there an ineluctable march towards the same body of knowledge? No, far from it. It's quite contested. It needs to be discussed. What do we want to achieve? It doesn't assume world government, it just assumes a dialogue about what internationalisation of education actually consists of.